Hi, thank you so much for tuning in to P2P Relates, where we talk about all things relationships. I'm Pat Renfro, and today I want to talk about being right is not all it's cracked up to be. How badly do you need to be right? I hope that we can unpack this today and you will walk away with some things to consider. You know, relationships are very complex, and sometimes we can convince ourselves that they're actually simple, but they can be really complex because each one of us as individuals are very complex people, right? There's a lot to us. There's a lot that brought us to where we are. And what's so important is making sure that we have healthy relationships. And that is not easy. I've discovered that even more so since I've been doing this channel. When you think about all the different ways that we relate in business, as co-workers, we don't need to be friends, but we need to respect each other. As in a marriage, we need to respect each other and we need to like each other. That helps the journey. The journey is not a sprint, it is definitely a marathon. And so you have to find ways to have the longevity. And as we go down the line to dating relationships, man, if you can't be friends, you really don't have a future together. And so the very first thing you can do in dating is work on the friendship. And finally, actually being a friend means lots of flexing. It doesn't get to go your way all the time. It needs to be able to say what's going to be best. And even in the midst of those type of decisions, you have to realize that there are going to be times where you're dead right. And then there's times when you're dead wrong. And when you're right, but the person still doesn't see it, what is the sacrifice you're willing to put to that, right? Because if I work at all costs to be right and to be validated, the person who doesn't agree with me very well can't be the person to validate me, right? Because they don't see it the way I see it. So we have to stop and say, okay, what is the cost to be the boss, right? So I'm going to give you 3 things, stay with you a very short time, that you can think about. And maybe that'll impact the way you respond in your relationships, be it business, marriage, dating, friendship. When you're in a situation where you feel like you're right and the other person doesn't see it your way and you all can't come to a common place, you almost have to stop and say, okay, I've looked at the evidence, I've looked at the facts on the floor, and I've decided that I am right. I'm definitely right. But what is the relationship worth to me? And if I stop and I say that relationship means the world to me, then the fact that I'm right and they're wrong means absolutely nothing. And it's really important to be able to stop and tell yourself the truth. And if you can't tell yourself the truth, then go find you a friend or someone that you know would be honest to tell you the truth. You give them all the information, all the facts, and just stop and listen. Because sometimes we need a different perspective. Sometimes we can only see it the way we see it. But you want to value the relationship, I would imagine, in most cases, more so than you want to be right. Now, if you come to a crossroad in a relationship and someone's doing something that's against your moral standard or anything along those lines where it's just unacceptable, then it may be a time to sever the relationship or at very least back up off of it for a while. I'm not saying ignore all things, but I am saying do the math. I tell you, this relationship piece is a math piece all the time. You have to stop and say, okay, if this relationship is more important to me than me being right, I need to back down and take a different perspective. Because sometimes if I back down, it may be perceived as passive aggressive because I'm really just signing off. I'm checking out. I'm not talking about checking out. I'm saying regress and really stop and say, okay, how could I see this differently? Look at this in a different way And I'd love to give you an example, but I think you can come up with your own examples, because we all have been in situations where we're convinced that we are right and they are wrong. And it would just hit me today. So what? All right, so that's number one. What's the value of that friendship? So I already went into number two, which is back off. And back off in this context means slow down, get off of your high horse of righteousness, and stop and see how other people are looking at this same thing. They may not need what you need. They may not function like you function. I can give you a good example. If you follow me, you know that I lost my husband last month. And by the time you listen to this video, it could be 5 years from now, so who knows. But at one point, I lost my husband. And when he passed away, of course, I was very sad. And I had a lot of emotions that probably didn't take but to rev up. So some things happened. I felt like they shouldn't have happened the way they did. I got really upset. And I upset my family. And one of my family members said, you just lost your husband. I think you're kind of like hypersensitive at this point, and that's probably why that impacted you that way, but it didn't really impact anybody else that way. I had to back off. Instead of pushing my point and saying, I was right, and I had the right to react like that, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. What was more important? Getting back on one accord with my family or staying right? Now, it's not easy. You can't just jump up and go, hey, y'all, peace, truce, it's all good. I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were right. Doesn't always work that way. But you have to first start with an attitude of, you know what? There's other ways to look at this. And it's okay that I reacted the way I did. However, maybe I would do it differently next time so that we won't have strife and we can all be on one accord, because that's really important. Unity is more important than being right all day long. But number three is, what is your desired outcome? Now, we would love to say, well, my desired outcome is to be right and for everybody to know I was right and everybody give me my dap. In real life, that's probably not going to happen that way very often. So you have to say, and it's all intertwined, like I said. Number one is to assess what is the value of that relationship. Because if the relationship is more important than you being right, guess what you got to do? Number two, step back, back off, chill out. And number three, what do you want your desired outcome to be? If you want a good relationship and you want healthy relationships and you want to be on one accord, then you want to make sure that you think about what it's going to take to do that. So when I'm right and everybody else is wrong, or at least that's what I think, I have to stop and say, what do I really want in this relationship? What really counts to me? What really matters? And in the end, that's the action that I want to take. I want to take an action that's going to put me on one accord with those relationships that are very important to me. So anyway, I told you I wasn't going to keep you long today. That's it. Hit the subscribe button. When you tap the bell, it'll let you know when I do an upload. And finally, hit the like. I always appreciate those. And you know I encourage comments. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.